All right, guys, as you can see by the screen behind me, we are gearing up for a mock draft. And yes, we have succumbed to the fantasy football community peer pressure, basically the NFL community peer pressure as a whole. And we are falling for the alliterative nomenclature of Mock Draft Monday. It's a Mock Draft Monday, folks. This one's going to be fun. We're going to add a little twist. So as always, like the video, comment what you think of the mock draft down below. Subscribe to the channel if you are not subscribed already, and I'll see you on the other side of that intro. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Twin Takes Fantasy Football as we gear up for another rookie mock draft today. I can hear you yelling on the other side of the screen, but it's been already over a month since the NFL draft, and there are a ton of rookie mocks that have already been done. Yes, I get that, but there are a lot of variations to different leagues. Rookie drafts go throughout the summer into early July, as I've been told. So I like doing them. I enjoy doing them. I'm going to continue to post them on the channel. Not too much longer. This will be the second to last one. I'll do one more probably next week, but they're fun, so why not? And I think a lot of people enjoy looking at them and watching the content here. And it's a great way to not only break down how I view these prospects, but it gives you a short little blurb about what I think of the prospect, their potential outlook, and my personal feelings about that. So you can honestly, if you've already done your rookie mock drafts, look at this as kind of a mini player evaluations video. So what's so special, as I mentioned in the intro, that this mock draft is going to have a twist to it. So obviously this is going to be a tight end premium SuperFlex draft. So we haven't done tight end premium yet. We're going to throw that little wrinkle into this, but we're also going to draft with a different mindset. I think it's really interesting to approach drafts as we approach the first two mock drafts, kind of given my personal feelings towards players. But I'm not always right. If I was, I would be doing this full time for a living. I'd have more than 12 subscribers, and my name would be flooded across the Twitterverse as a fantasy football god. But I'm not always right. So it's really important, I think, you approach rookie drafts with different viewpoints. And today, not only are we doing the tight end premium, we're going to be approaching this rookie mock draft as if we are very, very conservatively playing fantasy football. We're really shooting for those guys that have high floors, that are going to give us guaranteed production, and we're going to shy away and let some of those guys with higher upside fall, just to give you a little bit of perspective, and also kind of show you what guys I think have a higher floor and which guys I think are the riskier choices. So with that being said, hopefully I don't have to explain that this mock draft is going to be nowhere near representative of my personal rookie ranks, as you can go back and look at the rookie post-draft rookie ranking videos. Obviously approaching this with a different mindset. So with all those disclaimers out of the way, let's jump in to our first pick. Whether it's tight end premium, whether it's conservative, whether you're a risk taker, super flex, single quarterback, it's Bijan Robinson. This is the dude. 101, super easy pick. Going into 102, obviously, with all of my SuperFlex and in my 1QB drafts, Anthony Richardson was the first quarterback off the board. With our more conservative mindset here, we're going to go with Bryce Young, the guy that's going to be guaranteed to have a very, very high floor in the NFL. Obviously, given his stature, he does bring some concerns as far as, injury concern, standing in the pocket, seeing over offensive linemen. But with the absolute insane football IQ and football acumen that Bryce Young possesses, he'll be able to come in and command an offense pretty well. He's also been gifted the ability to learn under a pretty offensive-minded head coach in Frank Reich. So he was the 101 overall pick that kind of represents how the NFL views him. There really is such a low bust possibility on Bryce Young that he will be a very solid quarterback for your team for years and years to come. So at 103, this is where it gets a little bit tricky. It's going to be another quarterback, but we don't know yet if it's going to be CJ Stroud or Anthony Richardson. Which one is the safer prospect? And it really kind of depends on how you view the word safe. You could say Anthony Richardson is a safer prospect just based on the fact that he has tremendous rushing upside and it's going to give you that rushing floor of like at least 60 yards, 6 points, whatever. At least a good floor per game that you're not going to be completely screwed if you throw 2 interceptions and only throw for 170 yards. On the other hand, he's a very raw prospect as a traditional quarterback passer. And now you can say CJ Stroud's a little bit safer as a prospect, given the fact that, he was the 102 overall pick. He was hyped up as a top quarterback in this draft class for years and years since he took the field at Ohio State. He is a guy that has all the qualities you would expect of a quarterback coming into the league, with the prolific arm, prolific passing accuracy, ability to sit in the pocket and deliver throws and work through progressions. So it really depends. I think for our context here, we're going to go with a guy that's more NFL ready as a QB prospect, a guy that's going to be able to take the field pretty much from day one and give you a very good baseline of quarterback play. That's going to be CJ Stroud. And obviously here at 104, with all the concerns around Anthony Richardson, all the volatility that he does possess as an actual quarterback, the fact that this is a super flex, I think the conservative approach would be to load up on quarterbacks. You can never really have too many quarterbacks unless you have like 5 good quarterbacks. But if you are playing in a super flex league, that's really, really impossible. So taking a shot on a quarterback who was drafted 4th overall, goes to a very good offensive system under Shane Steichen, who helped develop quarterbacks like Justin Herbert and Jalen Hurts, I think you should definitely be willing to take that risk on Anthony Richardson. Now here at 105, we have to deviate. We're going to go to a skill position player. And as far as a safer prospect, we're going to go with Jackson Smith-Njigba. I think consensus talent-wise is going to be Jackson Smith-Njigba over Jamir Gibbs. Yes, Jamir Gibbs was drafted ahead of him. But when we look at kind of the fantasy life cycle of wide receivers and compare fantasy wide receivers compared to running backs and just overall production over an elongated period of time, which is what you're trying to, draw from when it comes to these rookie drafts in a dynasty league, I think Jackson Smith-Njigba will be the more valuable player over a longer stretch of time. He was obviously the more talented player coming into the 2022 season, touted as a top 10 draft pick. Obviously injuries had him falling just a little bit, but going to Seattle, giving him time to develop alongside DK. He won't have the immediate production that Jamir Gibbs has, but as a wide receiver talent, it's hard not to go for the number 1 wide receiver prospect in a draft class, especially when it falls to you at the 105. With that being said, it's not too far of a fall for Jamir Gibbs. He's going to go here at the 106 position. Obviously, as a running back, he's going to have a very decent floor. As a fantasy football player, he will get touches. He was drafted 12th overall, which just kind of shows you the confidence that the Detroit Lions have in drafting him to be not only a running back, but they've turned him an offensive weapon. I don't know if I truly buy into that moniker of an offensive weapon really being, that means he's going to be Christian McCaffrey. I don't know. I don't believe he's going to be Christian McCaffrey, but I believe he'll be utilized, in a way, maybe more so like Aaron Jones, where he does line up in the slot sometimes, where he does get a lot of pass catching work. And with the fact that Jameson Williams is serving a 6-game suspension, and the fact that DeAndre Swift was shipped off to the Eagles right after they drafted him, I think it's the immediate impact of Jamir Gibbs is going to be pretty heavy. So I think as far as someone who's looking for immediate fantasy production, Jamir Gibbs is a very, very safe bet for that. After Jamir Gibbs, we'll move on to Jordan Addison, a guy that I think we can all agree is much, much safer than Quentin Johnston and Zay Flowers. We've gone over the numerous concerns of both those wide receivers, but Jordan Addison, despite his size concerns, despite his weight concerns, is just a really, really polished wide receiver, whether it was at Pitt with Kenny Pickett or playing with Caleb Williams at USC. Jordan Addison was just a very elite route runner, does have that in-game speed to be a dynamic wide receiver to create separation, and he's not going to go up and win at the catch point. He's not going to, be a monster contested catcher like a DK Metcalf or be a true alpha, but alongside Justin Jefferson in Minnesota, with Kirk Cousins, a very quality pocket passer throwing him the ball, I think he does have a very, very high upside and a very, very, really, very, very high floor as a wide receiver too. I mean, we are looking at a guy that could easily, after 2 years, be a Devonta Smith level player. So he's definitely the safest of the remaining prospects. Now, we were talking about tight end premium league, and, especially when it comes into guys that we think are going to be a little bit more safer when it comes to drafting rookie prospects here. This is where we'll see our first tight end as Dalton Kincaid jumps up over the other 2 wide receivers in Zay Flowers and Quentin Johnston. Dalton Kincaid, the reports out of rookie camp so far is that he's integrating very well with the team. Reports are that the Bills brass had brought him in to be that secondary pass catcher to Stephon Diggs, given Gabe Davis's lack of production in that role last year. Again, with a guy that's being brought in alongside Dawson Knox. Dawson Knox being the guy that got the 4-year extension and is their do-it-all tight end. He's going to be the blocker. He's going to be the guy that takes on those nitty-gritty traditional tight end roles, while Dalton Kincaid has that really pass catcher upside. He's really more of that wide tight end, more of that. He's not Travis Kelce. I'm not going to compliment Travis Kelce, but he has that Travis Kelce-esque play style and role within this offense. And obviously, when you're getting a premium, when it comes to the catches, points per catch, when it comes to the tight end position, that's going to be very, very beneficial with Dalton Kincaid's role in the Buffalo Bills offense. Moving on to the 109, we're going to go back to the wide receiver well and take Zay Flowers. This is a great question. Again, if we're approaching this draft with a very conservative mindset, which player has the higher floor, that's going to be Zay Flowers for me over Quentin Johnston. I mentioned in my post-draft rankings that Quentin Johnston is not really an athletic wide receiver. He's an athlete that plays wide receiver. Now, Zay Flowers, when he's out in the field, yes, he has his concerns with his height and weight. However, he is truly a wide receiver who plays the wide receiver position. He's very, very skillful when it comes to catching the football. Not many concerns with body catches. Not many concerns with drops like Quentin Johnston does. He's very polished as a route runner, very speedy guy, especially with going to that Baltimore offense. He has, I think, a clearer path to the field and a clearer path to production than Quentin Johnston does. Zay Flowers slots in alongside of the oft-injured Rashad Bateman and also Odell Beckham Jr., who's only on a 1-year deal. So as Quentin Johnston has to fight through both Mike Williams and Keenan Allen. So as far as immediate production and a guy that has a less bust percentage, I'm going to go with Zay Flowers here. Did just talk about all of the concerns and the high bust percentage that Quentin Johnston does carry with him. He's really a boomer bust prospect in this draft. He could be, he could become honestly a DK Metcalf type player for the Chargers, tied to a great quarterback in Justin Herbert, or he could flame out of the league in about 3 years. So if we're conservative, we're not going to take him. We're going to go with another tight end who I think is very, very, who has a very real chance to hit the ground running out in Las Vegas. That's going to be Michael Mayer, a guy who I personally still view as the number 1 tight end prospect in this draft class. I've mentioned this over and over again, where I feel like a lot of people, just because he was so good for so long, they got prospect fatigued on him and they wanted the new hotness in Dalton Kincaid. Michael Mayer goes to the Las Vegas Raiders, who just shipped off Darren Waller, brought in Jimmy Garoppolo, a guy who is very, very frequently uses his tight ends. And we saw that with tremendous production with George Kittle back in his time at San Francisco. So Michael Mayer is not a bad prospect at all. He's not a bad pass catcher at all. He's actually quite good when it comes to just being an all-around tight end and a guy that can move the chains. And if he's going to be very active in the short and intermediate pass game, which is where Jimmy Garoppolo thrives, all those extra receptions for Michael Mayer are going to really reap you quite the reward in a tight end premium league. So at this point, we can't ignore Quentin Johnston for much longer. We're running out of first-round draft capital players. We actually don't have any more first-round draft capital players. So if we're going to be in a conservative mindset, we're going to take the guy that was drafted in the first round. We're going to follow what the NFL teams told us was the most valuable player left on the board in Quentin Johnston. We've already discussed him quite at length when we were comparing him to Jordan Addison and Zay Flowers. Obviously, super risky. Tremendously high upside, but also probably the largest bust percentage chance of any of these first round wide receivers. But you can't not take the chance on a first round drafted wide receiver, especially when it goes to a great situation with aging veterans in Mike Williams and Keenan Allen, and also tied to a great young quarterback in Justin Herbert. At the 112, we're going to jump down to the running back position and take Zach Charbonnet. Obviously, not the most ideal landing spot for Zach Charbonnet as he goes to the Seattle Seahawks, but we can't forget about how talented a prospect this kid was coming into the draft prior to the landing spot. Obviously, on the larger end of running backs, 6'1", 215 pounds, great pass catching ability, and you know that in the Seattle Seahawks, Pete Carroll loves to use his running backs. There will be a role for Zach Charbonnet, even if he is in a true 50-50 split with Kenneth Walker. Yes, he'll have to acquiesce some of his touches to Kenneth Walker, but Zach Charbonnet should have a significantly higher floor than the rest of the guys that are going to be following in rounds 2 through 4 here. And again, the thing is he has a high upside too. So if Kenneth Walker goes down to injury, Zach Charbonnet immediately becomes a top 6 running back, frankly, in the league, just given how much he's going to be utilized in the Seattle Seahawks running offense, and his pass catching ability is probably a little bit better than what Kenneth Walker has to offer. Moving down to the 201 here. Again, you might consider this a risky player, but when we take into the concept, the fact that this is a super flex league, the conservative approach here would be to draft another quarterback that essentially went in the first round, and Will Levis goes off with the 33rd pick to the Tennessee Titans. Still very, very high draft capital to invest in a quarterback. You know, the changing of the guard is upon us in Tennessee. Ryan Tannehill is going to be shipped off. Derrick Henry, this might be his last year with the team. If not, he can be shipped off sooner. Will Levis obviously has a lot of traits that you like to see in a quarterback, specifically his howitzer of an arm. Just needs to work on that accuracy. If he has a chance to sit for this first year, I think that's going to be really, really great for his development. But just overall, to have a guy that, you know, was comped to Josh Allen, not by me, by other people, just to have those specific traits, and going to a place where he could really see the field later this season, if not at the very bare minimum next season. And a super flex league, that's going to be very valuable, and you have to take your shot on quarterbacks when you can. At the 202, we're going to jump down to Kendra Miller. We won't see Devon Akers for a while. Again, this is a conservatively mindset that we're approaching this draft with. Kendra Miller, I think the skill set that he brings to the table as the running back out of TCU is tremendous. One of the more underrated running backs when it came to power, stability, ability to cut, and then, you know, first initial burst and speed in this draft class. And he goes to a place where, you know, he could become the lead back for New Orleans. Honestly, the first game of the season. The issue with Alvin Kamara is that we've talked about this ad nauseum, where the NFLPA has mandated that, you know, you put in the contracts that you can terminate the contract at cause based on a felony charge. We're anticipating that comes down for Alvin Kamara sometime in the next few weeks. So at the very minimum, he will be suspended for quite a few number of games, and at the very worst, he will be off this team entirely. Kendra Miller looks to be the future of the running game in New Orleans, especially a team that heavily utilizes their running back. So he's a very solid pick here at the 202. Moving on to the 203, we're going to go with another tight end. Again, the tight ends get bumped way, way up here, given this is a tight end premium league. So Sam LaPorta to the Detroit Lions comes off the board here at the 203 spot. Again, he was drafted higher than Michael Mayer. So I would say, yeah, believe what the NFL tells you, but we can clearly see that the Detroit Lions have a little bit skewed perception of a lot of these candidates than the rest of the NFL. But the fact that they took him at the top of the second round, basically a first round pick, if you want to consider it that, with the lost pick to Miami Dolphins that they forfeited for the tampering. They obviously lost TJ Hawkinson last year as I traded him away to the Minnesota Vikings. Sam LaPorta should come in. They seemed very, very excited to add him to the fold. So, you know, you do have the wide receiver one there, and Amon-Ra St. Brown should still generate the monster share of the target share. Jamir Gibbs is going to be used in the passing game. James Williams will come back at some point, but as far as a tight end, as far as a guy that, you know, was very athletic and come in, be a red zone threat, and can be kind of that short area guy for Jared Goff. I mean, it's only so it's not very far away that Jared Goff was throwing quite a bit to Tyler Higbee and all of the tight ends in the Los Angeles Rams. So I think Sam LaPorta, given his insanely high draft capital, will have quite a bit of usage in the Detroit offense. And in a tight end premium league, you'll see quite a bit of return on the value here at the 203 spot. Moving to the 204, typically, as when we approach drafts conservatively and we look at high floor players, that's going to be running backs. So we're going to jump down here to Roshan Johnson, a guy that, again, I'm extremely high on compared to most of the consensus out there, but I just think that he has a tremendous floor. I think that he is going to be this year's Dameon Pierce, a guy that was drafted early in the 4th round, but honestly didn't get much playtime in college. Dameon Pierce didn't get much playtime at Florida, was heavily utilized. Roshan Johnson being behind Bijan Robinson didn't get much playtime as well, but I think his skill set is tremendous. Only thing between him and the RB1 spot in Chicago is Khalil Herbert, and Khalil Herbert hasn't demonstrated that he can be truly an RB1, and he might, honestly, I have the feeling that Roshan could probably take over the number 1 spot in this offense by week 5 at the earliest, if not going into next season. So this is also going to be with Matt Eberflus has the ways he's constructed his offense around Justin Fields. It is a tremendously run-heavy offense, and that's going to feature Roshan Johnson early and often. Tremendous floor here for Roshan Johnson, and that's why I'm taking him this early in the draft. Moving on to the 205. We're going to go here with a wide receiver, Jonathan Mingo. A lot of reports out of camp so far have been skewed positive. Some negative reports with that he has a little case of the dropsies, but Christian Watson had that concern as well, and he's now valued as one of the top young wide receiver assets in Dynasty. But Jonathan Mingo here, again, we're following draft capital. First wide receiver taken off the board in the second round, 5th wide receiver overall. He comes into the class alongside Bryce Young. Don't want to read into it too much, but there's always a narrative of the quarterback and the wide receiver that go through rookie OTAs together, really form a bond. We saw that in those rookie mini camps that he was targeting Mingo quite a bit, that they had quite the connection. And I really just don't think there's any other wide receivers in Carolina that scare me enough to take me away from Jonathan Mingo. Adam Thielen, no. Terrace Marshall, no. DJ Chark, no. Jonathan Mingo could easily be the wide receiver 1. Not in nomenclature, but as far as target share and targets, Jonathan Mingo could be the number 1 target getter on that offense. I do like the floor that he provides. I could see Carolina upgrading next year and taking away that wide receiver 1 spot from Mingo, but for this year, I think he has a pretty high floor. Moving on from Jonathan Mingo, this is where, again, we can't ignore Devon Achane for too long. We've talked about, the conservative approach of wide receivers are just more volatile in nature to the running back position. And if you are generally approaching a rookie draft with a conservative mindset, really does behoove you to go with the running back. And Devon Achane is a guy that I think, going to be a very volatile player. He's going to a Miami offense with tons of weapons. He's going to be sitting behind, at least to start, he'll be sitting behind Jeff Wilson and Raheem Mostert. He also has Jalen Waddle, who takes snaps out of the backfield. So wouldn't say he's truly alone. Honestly, it could be a 4 backfield if they continue to give Waddle snaps out of the backfield, infrequently as it may be. Plus you have Tyreek Hill. We know that under Tua, as long as Tua is healthy, that this is going to be a pass first offense, and Waddle and Tyreek Hill are the main features. But Devon Achane will have his games where he goes off for 2 touchdowns, breaks off a 50-yard TD run, being the speedster that he is. And maybe as things start to flush out, maybe they get rid of Jeff Wilson. Maybe next season, Devon Achane is the true number 1. Things can look to be solidified a little bit more. Still quite a bit of volatility, but just given the name of Devon Achane, how popular he is, and the landing spot, I think you can't take him any later than a 206. Moving on, we're going to continue this little love affair with running backs here, and we take Tajae Spears. Why I took Devon Achane over Tajae Spears, I think Tajae Spears won't be as volatile a player as Devon Achane, but if you are very conservative in your mindset approaching your rookie drafts, the injury concerns about Tajae Spears really worry you. I've given my experience with knee cartilage damage and what I think really is truly impacting Tajae Spears, and how I think a lot of the reports are quite misleading about the extent of his damaged knee. But it's still fears that are realized, and this could be an issue with Todd Gurley, where he comes on strong, has 3 great years, and then falls off immediately out of the league within 5 years. I can't say that the knee injury reports are truly fabricated, because in every rumor there is a grain of truth. So if that really scares you, then I would definitely take Tajae Spears there. But I think going to Tennessee, where there's active participation to move Derrick Henry away, Hassan Haskins is basically a nothing asset as of this moment. Tajae Spears can certainly jump into a running back 1 role on a very run heavy offense that they run down there in Tennessee. After Tajae Spears, move on to the 208, and that is going to be Jaden Reed, wide receiver for the Green Bay Packers, the 6th wide receiver off the board in the draft, also garners second round draft capital. We didn't see anyone truly step up into an alpha role for the Green Bay Packers last year, and I don't think we see that happen yet again. I think Christian Watson's skill set's a little bit too nuanced to assume anything that we can see comparative to a Devontae Adams role, giving another former Green Bay Packer there. But, they got rid of Randall Cobb. They got rid of Alan Lazard. There's going to be plenty of target share opening up. And with the significant draft capital, I think they're looking for a guy like Jalen Reed, a very, very physical wide receiver who can win over the middle of the field. We don't see Jordan Love throwing bombs deep down the field where, Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs can really win. So I think Jaden Reed can really take advantage of kind of the short to intermediate pass game as Jordan Love gets his feet as a quote unquote rookie QB his first season as a starter. After Jaden Reed, it's SuperFlex league, so we have to give our certain due to the quarterbacks, and we'll be taking Hendon Hooker. Those of you who follow the channel know that I'm quite high on Hendon Hooker and actually think he has a better long-term prospect than Will Levis, given the similarity of their situations. Right now, Hendon Hooker going with third-round draft capital to the Detroit Lions. Obviously, will not be starting this year. That is a given, but he could assume the starting role as early as next season with Jared Goff's impending contract coming to an end. And there has been rumors of a contract extension, but that has not materialized as of the date of this recording. But as soon as Hendon Hooker steps into the offense, it's honestly an offense that I don't think is going to be too far removed from his time at Tennessee. They talk about Tennessee being a very gimmicky offense. Well, frankly, Ben Johnson is one of the more creative offensive minds when it comes to the offensive coordinators running around the NFL. And I think he can really work to Hendon Hooker's strong suits as a quarterback and as a game manager. Also, given the immense amount of weapons surrounding Hendon Hooker and Jamison Williams, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jamir Gibbs, Sam LaPorta, David Montgomery being brought in this past offseason. I think there can be plenty of weapons for him to take advantage of and to manage an offense that he will, be a very competent quarterback above center. Doesn't have the ceiling that an Anthony Richardson, a Will Levis, CJ Stroud have, but certainly one of the better investments at a third-round QB that you can make. Moving on after this, we're going to be taking here at the 210 another tight end, because this is a tight end premium league. We're going to take Luke Schoonmaker, moving quite a bit further down the draft board. Obviously, Sleeper has their tight ends ranked just a tad bit different than I have my personal rankings, but I think Luke Schoonmaker comes in and makes an immediate impact for the Dallas Cowboys. This is an offense that has heavily featured its tight ends in the past. We saw Dalton Schultz be a league winner at the tight end position, a waiver wire wonder, if you will, in 2021. Last year, they saw them with Dalton Schultz's injury really trying to force both Peyton Hendershot and Jake Ferguson into the fold, trying to get them any sort of production at the tight end position. But alas, that attempt was futile. So they go out and get the big-bodied athletic tight end from Michigan, Luke Schoonmaker, invest second-round draft capital in him. So a very significant investment as far as the team is concerned. And he should come in and be paired up with a quarterback in Dak who does heavily utilize his safety blanket in the tight end position. Certainly has a high floor, and especially in a tight end premium league, you will be very happy with the return on investment that Luke Schoonmaker gives you here at the end of the second round. Moving to the 211, we're going to see Tank Bixby off the board here. Recently in the Twitterverse, people are talking about how Tank Bixby is going to take Travis Etienne's job. I really don't think that is the case. I truly believe Travis Etienne will be the one in this offense for the next 2 years at the very minimum. I think Travis Etienne comes in as a nice complementary back to Travis Etienne, where Travis Etienne is a little bit lighter and works out of the passing situation a little bit more. Tank Bixby can come in and can be your bruising in between running back, can be your goal line back, and we'll have adequate usage. We know Doug Peterson, the coach down there in Jacksonville, loves to use running back by committee. So Tank Bixby will be utilized to ease the workload on Travis Etienne. We saw Travis Etienne got 74% of rushing touches last year, and Doug Peterson came out and said there's absolutely no way he's getting anywhere near that level of touches this year. So Tank Bixby can come in, and obviously Travis Etienne's health history is not the most prolific. So if he gets injured, Tank Bixby really gets thrust into a pretty capable running back 2 slot for your team. I just think the floor that Tank Bixby has as a backup running back is one of the highest when you look across the league and it comes to backup running backs. Moving on to our last pick of the second round, it's going to be Rishi Rice. There's tremendous concerns I have about the rest of the wide receivers left on the board, but if you're going to take a wide receiver here, you might as well pair him with the best quarterback in the league in Patrick Mahomes. Rishi Rice does have that second round draft capital investment, and apparently he did play catch with Patrick Mahomes prior to the draft, and Mahomes said, I want that guy. Always a good sign when your quarterback has a connection with the wide receiver. There's also plenty of vacated targets with both Mecole Hardman and Juju Smith-Schuster leaving Kansas City, and Rishi Rice, while not going to be a ground-breaking wide receiver by any means, don't expect him to fill the Tyreek Hill role. Again, this is going to be a offensive scheme by committee, just with how many offensive pieces they have between Kadarius Toney, Jerick McKinnon, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I'm missing a lot of people here. MVS, Travis Kelce, Blake Bell, Noah Gray, Isaiah Pacheco. I mean, you saw how involved everyone was throughout the season, how involved everyone was in the Super Bowl. He'll have, good usage, but he won't be, a tremendously high upside wide receiver, but a guy that should at least carry a solid floor of value. And again, being attached to the Kansas City Chiefs always gives you the Kansas City Chiefs bump. So if nothing else, draft him for the perceived value of Kansas City wide receivers. That's a very safe floor to have. Moving into the third round, we're on track to make this go another hour. I was trying to have it go a little bit quicker, but not going to happen. Another hour-long mock draft for you guys. Hope you are brought your popcorn. We're moving here to draft Luke Musgraves. Again, this is a tight end premium league, so we got to take the shot on tight ends. Again, a lot of the wide receivers that we have left on the board bring tremendous concerns as far as their volatility and usage as even a wide receiver 2 in their own respective offenses. And we look at the situation in Green Bay where they are very tight end vacant outside of Josiah DeGuara. I don't know why that line was so hard to say, but they give second round draft capital to Luke Musgrave, a guy that has health concerns, injury concerns, but when I was on the field this past season for Oregon State was a tremendous athlete. So if he can come in, he's going to be fills a massive need for the Green Bay Packers in the tight end room. Also, we always look at, very neophyte quarterbacks really relying on their tight end as a safety blanket. So the tight end for Jordan Love could be a very, very valuable fantasy asset, and we'll take that risk here on Luke Musgrave. Moving on to the 302, we'll take Marvin Mims. Again, as far as the guys left, the most stable quarterback of the the big three left in Downs, Hyatt, and Mims, the most stable quarterback here is going to be Russell Wilson, and you do bring in the offensive guru in Sean Payton. Marvin Mims is quite buried on the depth chart right now, behind Hamler, Patrick, Judy, and Sutton, but I do believe that to be clearing up here shortly. And once, one or two of those assets are moved, Marvin Mims will be flying up the draft boards. He has the second round draft capital. He is a very, very undervalued wide receiver. I thought he's an underrated wide receiver coming into this draft class. I think he does provide quite a bit of value in that offense. And we've seen Russell Wilson prefers to throw to wide receivers over tight ends, so no threat of Greg Dulcich here, vulturing targets from Marvin Mims. Might take him a little bit while to develop and break out and really come into his own as an NFL player, but a great shot here at the 302. Following Mims at the 303 as well, we'll take the pick on Downs. Again, between Downs and Hyatt, they both have rushing quarterbacks, quote unquote, in Daniel Jones. Again, both go to quite vacant wide receiver rooms in the Colts and Giants respectively. However, Josh Downs was just one of the more talented prospects coming out of the 2023 wide receiver draft class. Was drafted ahead of Jalen Hyatt, and we're just going to follow the draft capital and the talent of the player. Josh Downs, when he was with Sam Howell, what he did with Drake May at UNC was really, really impressive, was very, very productive over multiple years, while Jalen Hyatt was only productive in his senior year. So we'll go with the talent and production of Josh Downs here at the 302. Moving on to the 304, we're moving back to our love affair with running backs, taking Chase Brown, a guy that I think is going to have his value skyrocket. Joe Mixon is quite the conundrum. He could get cut due to not only poor play, but also legal issues. There have been rumors that he might get cut in the post-June 1st designation if he is not willing to take a pay cut as they look to pay other assets on that team, like Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins. With only being a 5th-round draft capital, I don't think Chase Brown is long for the RB1 spot for the Bengals. But if Joe Mixon falls off the wagon here for the Bengals, Chase Brown, I think, could be a great one-year stopgap in a very high-powered Bengals offense. If you are drafting him, I would definitely approach this with the intention that he is here for a competing team to be a low-end RB2 for 1 year before they invest significant capital in a running back next year in a very strong running back class. But with Joe Mixon's, I think with his injury history, with his legal concerns, with his fall in production last year, Chase Brown should assume something close to an RB1 role for the Bengals this coming season. At the 305, we're going to see a guy that hasn't made an appearance in many drafts for this channel before, and that's going to be Tucker Kraft, the other Green Bay Packers wide receiver. We've seen this all the time where a team will take 2 wide receivers and the take 2 tight ends in the same draft, and the second tight end ends up producing. We saw it in Baltimore when they took Hayden Hurst in the 1st round and Mark Andrews in the 3rd round, and Mark Andrews is only the second best tight end in the league right now. We saw it last year with who is it? It was also the Ravens again taking Isaiah Likely, and I don't even remember the guy they took ahead of him. That's how irrelevant he is now. So there is an opportunity. Tucker Kraft does have a much more polished injury history than Luke Musgraves does. And he is also, while he didn't have the production profile that Lucas Musgraves did, and also comes from the FBS school of South Dakota State, he didn't dominate at that level that you would like to see someone like a Dallas Goedert, who came from the same school as him, did at the tight end position. But he's a very athletic tight end, and he could potentially be more suited to the pass catching role for the Green Bay Packers. So in a tight end premium league where you're going to be getting a lot of bonus for tight end catches, if Tucker Kraft pans out to be the pass catching tight end for Green Bay Packers for the future, especially in a very, very vacant tight end room, it's a great investment here at the 305. Moving on to the 306, we're going to go and take our last wide receiver here that we talked about, Jalen Hyatt, a guy that I personally love, but just, I love his upside. He has tremendous ceiling, but he could fall flat. There are a lot of concerns around him coming from the gimmicky offense, not having a really polished route tree, not having, particular skill sets that true alpha wide receivers enter the NFL with. But I love his separation ability. I love his speed. I love that he's going to a Brian Daboll offense. I think Brian Daboll could utilize him as his own mini Stephon Diggs. Won't go into that comparison now. If you want to see that comparison, go check out the post-draft rankings for wide receivers. And also just a very vacant wide receiver room that's filled with a lot of deep threats. So Jalen Hyatt has the chance to establish himself as a go-to pass catcher for Daniel Jones. The upside is tremendous, but also the bust chance is pretty high as well, which is why he falls quite a bit in this conservatively minded draft. After that, we're going to go back to the tight end because, this is a tight end premium draft. And if you're drafting with a conservative mindset, you're going to want to bring the guys you're going to draft the guys that bring the most return on value and have the highest floor. And that's Brenton Strange. Obviously not a guy that will have the highest floor year one, as the Jacksonville Jaguars do bring back Evan Ingram on the franchise tag. But, this could be historically, for tight ends, you're not expecting them to develop year one. You're expecting them to take 2 to 3 years to become fantasy relevant, and that's totally fine for Brenton Strange. He can sit behind Evan Ingram for the first year, and he can really burst onto the scene in year 2 or year 3, especially being tied to a top 5 young quarterback in Trevor Lawrence and an explosive offense that really came into its stride towards the end of the 2022 season. I think as the tight end there, it could return quite a bit of value here in the middle of the 3rd round. After Brenton Strange, we're going to go with the highest remaining drafted wide receiver, Cedric Tillman, who was also taken in the 3rd round by the Cleveland Browns. The path to him being the wide receiver 2 is going to be arduous. They did bring in Elijah Moore from the New York Jets via trade. They have Donovan Peoples-Jones there. So, it's a little bit crowded when it comes to the wide receiver room. Also, I do have issues when it comes to organizational incompetence, which the Browns are not lacking any of. And Deshaun Watson, he did not look like the Deshaun Watson of old. He did look quite rusty. So I do want to see him shake off the rust before I really believe in any Browns asset. But listen, if he does return to Deshaun Watson of old and Cedric Tillman can establish himself above Elijah Moore, who's a smaller wide receiver, if he can establish himself above Donovan Peoples-Jones, establish himself above the last year's third-round pick and David Bell, I think he can have a pretty high floor attached to, a great quarterback in Deshaun Watson, hopefully. Moving on after Cedric Tillman, we're going to go with a running back here in Zach Evans, who's been flying up the rookie boards. I know when I was doing some of these mock drafts, not my personal ranking ones, because I was a little bit higher on Zach Evans than most people, but if I go through and just sim most of this, you'll see Zach Evans falling to the middle or the end of the fourth round, sometimes not even drafted at all. Recently, he has been flying up the draft board, and I think people are just catching on to the fact that he's going to a very depleted offensive Los Angeles Rams team that only has Cam Akers, who has, the big injury red flag, the injury bugaboo of the Achilles heel, which is known as the running back killer. Also a guy that was almost shipped off from the Los Angeles Rams at the trade deadline last season, only to make his way back and become a top 3 running back during the last stretch of 4 games for the fantasy playoffs. But if something happens, if there's still that sort of discord between Sean McVay and Cam Akers, or if Cam Akers, gets bit by the injury bug again, Zach Evans is thrust into a pretty lucrative starting role there as as the immediate running back 1 for the Los Angeles Rams. So yeah, Zach Evans, a guy that, if you're drafting earlier, I hope you got him at the end of the 3rd, early 4th, because I don't think you can get him there anymore. Moving on, after Zach Evans, will be taking a guy that personally makes me want to throw up in my mouth, and that is going to be Stetson Bennett, also of the Los Angeles Rams. Again, we're just talking about safe players here. And there's only one quarterback signed to the Los Angeles Rams roster coming into this season. That was Matthew Stafford, who still is not throwing at OTAs. He's still dealing with that injury that kept him out for the second half of the season last year. Again, apparently a lot of people in the room leading the charge over there in Los Angeles for the Rams are very high on Stetson Bennett, think that coming out of Georgia, he has a very, very high football IQ. I disagree that he got it since he got arrested in Dallas. And think that his transition to the NFL will be very easy. He makes a great backup, maybe not even a backup, maybe a future plan for Matt Stafford if he eventually retires. Retirement wasn't out of the picture this past season. So with Stetson Bennett here, I think you get a very high quality backup with an organization that does believe in him and a guy that could potentially be a starter and give you Baker Mayfield-esque type play. Moving on after this is going to be Izzy Akunne, running back for the New York Jets. Look, I think Izzy's incredibly talented, but he's never going to be that running back 1 as long as Breece Hall's in the building. However, he can drive some pretty immediate production. I think he comes in, seems like Michael Carter has fallen out of favor with the coaching staff up in New York, and there could be a little bit of time before Breece Hall truly returns to form from that ACL injury he suffered in week 4 of last year. Izzy Akunne became the guy that can come in and be the immediate running back stopgap for the team. This is also a very run-heavy team under Robert Saleh, who comes from the Kyle Shanahan tree of running offenses. So he's a very, very high-quality backup. I think you're getting a slightly worse Tank Bixby at a much, much better value. So especially if you're the Breece Hall manager, you should be targeting Izzy Akunne for sure. To round out the end of the 3rd round, another guy that is making his debut here on the mock draft series of Twin Takes Fantasy Football is going to be Darnell Washington, a guy that for all intents and purposes, I'm avoiding like the plague, but in a tight end premium league, especially the ones that are giving outrageous 2 points per reception, to tight ends, I think Darnell Washington can really drive a lot of value. I think he will be mostly a 6th offensive lineman, but given Kenny Pickett doesn't have the biggest arm in the world, we'll be looking for a lot of safety blankets. Yes, that's going to be primarily Pat Freiermuth, but there's going to be I'd probably say about 3 to 4 times per game where they're going to be looking for a quick yardage, a short, a a 3rd and 4 situation where they're just trying to move the chains really quickly. And what better thing to do to throw to the absolute mountain of a man that's at the end of your offensive line in Darnell Washington. If he's getting 3 to 4 catches a game, that's tremendous value in a tight end premium league. In a normal league, I don't think he returns a lot of value, but in tight end premium league, Darren Waller is going to be as consistent comes and gives you a very, very high floor because we are approaching this draft with a conservative mindset, and we want those high floors. Moving into our last round here. I always say I'm going to try to speed run this round, but it's never going to happen. We'll start off with Dwayne McBride, one of my favorite running backs from this class, one of my favorite underrated running backs going to the Minnesota Vikings. Again, a lot of rumors coming out about Dalvin Cook being moved on from, being traded to the Bills, being a post-June 1 cut if he does not take a reduction in monies. So a guy that could slot in as a high-level backup behind Alexander Mattison. The same way we talked about Roshan Johnson and Khalil Herbert. Alexander Mattison has not proven that he can do it, be a true every-down workhorse running back one, take the full workload for a season. So Dwayne McBride, as a very talented running back, despite the 7th-round draft capital, can come in. And I think with Dalvin Cook being let go from the roster in the near future, he will be a tremendous value. After that, tight end premium. So let's start drafting some of these tight ends. A lot of the guys that we think, even though we're drafting this, approaching this with a conservative mindset, there's not many conservative high floor players. You've noticed that I've stopped saying high floor conservative mindset because that just really doesn't exist once you get past the 2nd round. So you might as well, if you want to draft conservatively, you're taking tight ends that can really return value in a tight end premium league. A guy that I like a ton is Zach Coons, who was a 7th-round draft pick to the New York Jets. I don't know why he fell that far because he's just an absolutely tremendous athlete, but he goes to a really, really good situation, the New York Jets. They had quite a big hole to fill at the tight end position. They tried with C.J. Uzomah. He's still there, just not what he was with the Bengals. They tried Irv Smith. He's now gone. He went to the Bengals, but they bring in Zach Coons, and I think where Zach Coons' upside really lies is the fact that Aaron Rodgers' red zone tight end target percentage is twice any other quarterback in the league. He really relies on his tight ends in the end zone. Zach Coons should get a few catches and an end zone target. I'm happy as a pig in mud with what he can return to me as an early 4th-round value. Moving on afterwards, we're going to go to the quarterback position again because there's not really any running backs or wide receivers that I like here. We're going to go with guys that can give you production this year. That's going to be Clayton Tune to Arizona. Yes, they currently have the old Texas quarterback, Colt McCoy, under roster, and he could be the starter for the season with Kyler Murray going to be rehabbing probably most of this entire season with his ACL injury. But Colt McCoy's injury history isn't great either. Clayton Tune, as a very accomplished quarterback out of the University of Houston, could step in and be a very capable game manager for the Arizona Cardinals. Would have to scramble a lot, would have to run a lot, as I assume they'll be in a lot of negative strip games. So as a late flyer on a quarterback, Clayton Tune is as good as one as I'll be willing to take. After Clayton Tune, I'll stick in Phoenix and go with a wide receiver, Michael Wilson. As of earlier the week of this recording, and this will be posted a little bit, we're going to go live a little bit later, but as of this is being recorded, DeAndre Hopkins was finally released, meaning that, a lot of competition for targets in the wide receiver room in Atlanta has cleared up immensely. Michael Wilson has now shot up that depth chart. Probably, if he can stay healthy, he's probably the current wide receiver 2 behind Marquise Brown. However, Marquise Brown's going to be doing a lot of his work out of the slot. So Michael Wilson has that opportunity to be the kind of go-to X wide receiver on the outside. Not that I'm projecting this Arizona Cardinals offense to be any good this year. Definitely a guy that I think has more value if he can establish himself as a decent wide receiver 1, and then hopefully moving forward into the 2024 and 2025 season. But this is the first offensive weapon that the new regime under Jonathan Gannon and the new GM have drafted. This is a guy that they think that, they can build for the future with. They invested significantly high draft capital in him in the day 2 draft capital. And if they get the first overall pick, it's not out of the possibility that they draft Caleb Williams. They move on from Kyler Murray. Then they would have absolutely no reason to hold on to Marquise Brown and his exorbitant contract. So Michael Wilson will have a lot of room for opportunity. And this is more of a throw him on your taxi roster, see how the rest of the season plays out and what happens next offseason. After Michael Wilson, we're going to go with Tank Dell. Yes, he is quite the outlier when it comes to size, being a 5'8" wide receiver. But, he is the guy that has day 2 draft capital, one of the very few here in the 4th round that are going to have that high of a draft capital. He was, apparently a very sought after target by the Houston Texans. He was a guy that CJ Stroud personally said, once you draft me, Texans, go get this guy. He's tremendous when it comes to, lower body mobility, start-stop ability. I think he'll be hampered a little bit with his ceiling by his height and overall frame. But hey, listen, as a gimmick guy, as a gadget guy, as someone who, can get open his floor, he will be utilized in this offense. And what we're looking for is a decent floor, and Tank Dell might have the highest of anyone here in the 4th round. Moving on, we're going to go, this is super flex, so we're going to start taking a lot of shots here. We're going to take Dorian Thompson-Robinson, a quarterback that I was really, really high on coming into this draft. I think he's tremendously talented out of UCLA. I love the fact that he was a 5-year starter there, got better and better every single year he was under center. It's very similar to another quarterback named Jalen Hurts, who had a PFF passer grading improve every single year, both in college and in the NFL. Dorian Thompson-Robinson gets to sit behind Deshaun Watson, and if Deshaun Watson doesn't regain his former glory from Houston, we could see DTR take the field. I love the traits. He's a great dual threat quarterback. He's a rushing quarterback, and he has a cannon of an arm. He does have accuracy concerns, but who doesn't nowadays? I just love everything Dorian Thompson-Robinson has to bring to this offense. And if he gets this shot, I think it's a great shot to take here at the end of the 4th round. 407 here, we're going to go take a shot on another running back, Sean Tucker. Just a guy that, he was projected to be a 1st overall pick in a SuperFlex draft only a year ago, a guy that had tremendous upside, very highly touted prospect, a track star coming out of Syracuse. Obviously, injury concerns have completely derailed his draft capital as he went undrafted to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But hey, went to Tampa Bay where he's only sitting behind Rachaad White. He has a very clear path to the field, tremendous upside as long as he can get his health situation sorted out, whether it's the foot or the heart situation. So, if he makes the roster, he's a great guy to take an upside shot here on in the 4th round. Moving on to the 408, we'll take a shot on Kayshon Boutte. Again, another guy very similar to Sean Tucker. Was a projected 1st round rookie pick for SuperFlex drafts. However, he didn't fall due to injury concerns. He fell due to character concerns, and he goes to a place in New England that I'm not really sold on their ability to develop wide receivers. But, as a guy who holds the single game reception record in the SEC for LSU, might as well take your shot on him. He could be he has the most talent of anyone here left in the 4th round, and that'll at least give you some, peace of mind as far as taking a shot on a guy if you're conservatively minded approaching this draft. 4 more picks. Let's go. Next 2 picks, Eric Gray, Evan Hull, high-end backups for New York Giants and Indianapolis, respectively. I like Eric Gray a little bit better because Saquon's on the franchise tag. Moving on, Elijah Higgins. We gotta have a fun player. Gotta have some fun players in here. Elijah Higgins was a wide receiver, going to be converted to tight end for the Miami Dolphins. You look at Jalen Waddle in that offense. You look at Tyreek Hill in that offense, and if they really like Elijah Higgins and have utilized him as part of this offense, I trust no one more so than Mike McDaniel to really get in there and scheme open some really cool touches and really cool schemes for Elijah Higgins. Here, it's 2nd to last pick in this draft. Might as well take him. They got rid of Mike Gesicki, so the tight end room is wide open, so we should at least have some semblance of a floor of tight end usage in the tight end room there in Miami. And finally, we're going to end with my favorite fun pick. God, I love this pick. I love doing it every time. Let's go to the bottom here. Malik Cunningham, quarterback for New England Patriots. Again, Bill Belichick has just have this wild love affair with dual threat quarterbacks, and he brought Cam Newton into the building. Actually worked out quite a bit with Cam Newton before he, went off the rails later in the 2021 season. But Malik Cunningham, sneaky good pickup by the New England Patriots. They actually gave him the largest UDFA contract in history, equivalent to a late 4th, early 5th round pick. So good for you, Malik. So, if the cognitive dissonance and the frustrations and separation between Bill Belichick and Mac Jones seems to continue, Malik might be your shot. Wouldn't be the first late round or undrafted quarterback that they have developed up there in New England. So that's going to take us to the end of our draft here. I hope you guys have enjoyed approaching this draft with tight end premium perspective, and also that little bit of twist of approaching this with a little bit more conservative mindset. And hopefully I gave you some guys that I think their floors are a little bit higher. And if you are someone who's competing now, who just needs a safe running back 4 or a safe wide receiver 4, or just, you've been burned by the high upside guys in the past, hopefully this is giving you a little bit of insight into either who to draft or at least who to trade for post-draft. So that being said, I got to get some water. My throat is killing me from talking for essentially an hour straight. We did keep it under 55 minutes though. So I'm going to wrap this up here by saying thank you all. Continue to support the channel, like the video, comment down below, subscribe to this channel, and as always, take care guys and enjoy the off season.